Hello and welcome back. How are all of you? So, today's episode we are going to be talking about the wonderful genius of Bret Easton Ellis, one of my favourite writers, and why he stands as an amazing writer. From social critique to whirlwind of nihilism and excess, he seems to capture something that's quite unapologetic in his work, and I love that. So, let's talk about it. I'm also going to add, if you want uncensored versions of my videos, exclusive videos, please check out my Patreon or consider becoming a member. So, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. One of the things about Bret Easton Ellis's work that just gets to me in the best way possible is the unflinching realism. He is often praised for it, and he dives headfirst into the underbelly of society, exposing its flaws, its hypocrisies, without sugarcoating. Sharp poise and keen observation are prime examples of that within his work. From his non-fiction White, where it was a interesting and wonderful look at modern society, but also his fiction, American Psycho, probably his most well-known book, but also books like Rules of Attraction, which really do take that look at the world. It's a vivid picture of materialism, superficiality, and moral decay. And it's fundamentally brilliant. Let's be honest. The complexity of his characters. I think this is one of his greatest strengths. He can create characters and that are so deep and so complex and multifaceted characters, whether it's Patrick Bateman or the disillusioned Clay in Less Than Zero. His characters are deeply flawed, yet undeniably human. He goes into their psyche, explores their minds, their insecurity. Social critique is another theme of his work. There is no way to put this into words in an easy way. This took me forever to write, but the heart of his work is searing critique of contemporary society. He exposes the emptiness, the superficiality that is a major thing in modern life. He is challenging readers to confront uncomfortable truths about celebrity, consumer culture, the erosion of morality. It's thought-provoking and it's interesting. I fell in love with his work when I was 19. My uncle gave me a box of books, and in it was a hardback of Less Than Zero from the 80s. I couldn't put it down, and then I explored local bookshops and other places to find his other work. I think, as a writer, his strongest work is Glamorama. That is a fascinating and somewhat bizarre look at the fashion industry, yet it's probably his most concise, and his most recent work, The Shards, is equally as good. It's his Bennington novel. I wholeheartedly recommend the podcast Once Upon a Time at Bennington College. It's fascinating and really delves deep. Part of the literary Brat Pack, Bret has a voice unlike no other. His works have had huge cultural impact, which is it's fascinating to witness. American Psycho, it remains a cultural lightning rod. Its themes of violence and excess continue to resonate with an age-obsessed image and status. Look at the controversy around it. His publisher didn't want to publish the novel, so it ended up going to a different publisher. It courted controversy, and that I find fascinating. His podcast is also equally fascinating. His only non-fiction work, White, like I mentioned at the beginning, is a fantastic look at society and his own essays mixed with his own experiences through his career, but also ripping apart society, be it political or structural, are themes that resonate through that, as well as his fiction work, and his themes are timeless. His themes of alienation, identity, the meaning in a world devoid of value, transcends boundaries and speaks to a universal anxiety and uncertainties of the human condition. Bret, as a writer, creates something that is fundamentally brilliant. I ended up delving through his work, and I've been on a rereading spree, and we read them all, and I've been blown away. I forgot how strong his works were and those striking themes that run through them. Rules of Attraction, for some reason, is the book I go to the most, yet his most strongest work, I should say, is Glamorama. But his other books also sink into that as well. There's an interconnected universe, interconnected characters, stories that, love or loathe him. There's no denying the power and significance of Ellis's contribution to the world of literature. Film adaptations have been quite interesting. There is a film adaptation of Less Than Zero, which is not the book. It bears some resemblances to the book, but it's definitely not the book, because the book doesn't have really a plot. And I mean that in a good way. The film has a very young and somewhat beautiful Robert Downey Jr. in it, and it's a fantastic film. I ended up going through it from start to finish, and I haven't seen that in a very long time. I have a vague memory of my mother having it on VHS when I was a child, and that's about it. Other adaptations of his work are quite interesting. I will pick on Rules of Attraction for this one. A very interesting look, and James Van Der Beek is phenomenal in it. Like, you actually see Dawson from Dawson's Creek act, which is something rare, and it's self-aware enough as well, and very familiar to my own experiences within college. I ended up rewatching American Psycho, and by accident I discovered my Xbox can play 4K Blu-rays, so I'm very happy. The American Psycho film is great, and it deals beautifully with the themes, and I think it's a fundamentally brilliant film. And I think what people forget often with his work, and specifically American Psycho, is that it is satire, and it's all in the guy's head. Now, we're not going to talk about American Psycho 2, that film is embarrassing, and was never intended to be a Bret Easton Ellis thing. Now let's talk about his screenwriting. And I'm going to pick on the Canyons for this. This film should not have worked. It had an adult star in it called James Dean and Lindsay Lohan. Apparently their relationship on set was quite volatile, and that's saying quite interesting things about it. I think it was unfairly vilified when it came out because of Lindsay Lohan and drama surrounding her and what was going on in the headlines. But, and I'm going to put this, is it an amazing movie? No. Is it a strong film and somewhat creative art film? Yes. It packs a punch, and it's beautifully shot. It is. Purely on a cinematic level, that film is gorgeous. The set pieces, the lighting, everything, it's all fundamentally a beautiful film. And it does remind me of a smaller art house movie, and that's how you should look at it. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I sat down and finally watched it after putting it off for several years. Now, when it comes to other things within the Bret Easton Ellis canon, there is a lot. He's currently writing a book on cinema, which I hope it gets finished, because I think that would be a really interesting one. He's obviously a movie nerd, much like myself, and you can see it in his podcast. His podcast is unflinching. He interviews people, and you can hear clips of it, and there's stuff on YouTube, but really you need to sit down and listen to the whole thing. A writer with the ability to trigger millennials, and it's amazing. And Gen Z as well, let's be honest, because you only have to say boo to them. It's his work, I think, and there isn't much Bret Easton Ellis in the canon, and I kind of like that. It's not a constant onslaught of books every few years. There's been gaps between each book. There's been a short story collection. There have been lists of these books, and I wax lyrical about his work because it touched me in a way that I didn't realise. What I find fascinating is many readers don't understand his work and they freak out over, air quotes, acts of misogyny and this and that, that the writer must support what he's writing when really it's criticism of what he's seeing and satire of what it is. An act of fictional misogyny is not actual misogyny, just saying. Literary comprehension in the book community is extremely weak, and I will say I've never been disappointed by a Bret Easton Ellis novel. I've sat down, I listened to the Shards as it was being read out, and it's where I got the idea to read my own book out on Patreon, to a much smaller audience, I might add. And on here, to members, the listening to that final draft versus what was published, the editing is definitely concise, and I adored the Shards. I really did. I couldn't put it down. I read it I bought it in hardback. I have a signed hardback on my shelf because I bought it from Waterstones and paid stupid money for it, and I don't regret it. He has a unique voice, and the Shards is the Bennington novel. Is interlinked to other writers such as Donna Tartt, who I'll be covering in a Patreon and members-only video at some point in the future. He is undoubtedly one of the strongest voices in literature, in modern literature of his generation, I think. And fundamentally, I think that's fascinating. He's also helped me find some amazing books, and that's always been a fun thing because I do see what he's reading and what he's talking about. And I love it. I absolutely love it. The only way I can describe it is that as the books have sort of come to me over the years, I read them when I was 19 when I started, and then I'm reading as I go, and it's interesting the layers. Revisiting those novels this year has been fun, and I finally replaced some of my crappy crappy paperbacks with beautiful hardbacks because they were literally disintegrating. You know, some of these I got in library sales and book sales and yard sales because, you know, a lot of these books, I wasn't really an internet shopper until I was in my late 20s. So a lot of these books were ones that I have cherished and read many times. I go into those books and I just can't put them down. I think like I said at the beginning, the timeless themes, the cultural impact, the narrative techniques of his work are also fascinating. From fragmented timelines to unreliable narrators, he pushes the boundary of conventional storytelling. He creates narratives that are disorienting as they are creative, and the willingness to take risks and defy literary conventions. It sets him apart. And he challenges his readers. He challenges you when you read those books. There is no if, buts, and maybes about it. That's what he does. They are challenging. And having kind of delved into his work over those years, like just going through them bit by bit, just absolutely fascinates me. And I'm going to say this, like I said earlier, listen to the Once Upon a Time at Bennington College if you want a real insight into Bret as a writer and the people that he knows. Donna Tartt's debut novel, The Secret History, was dedicated to Bret Easton Ellis, and it really goes to show the interlinking play of those writers and that voice and that connection. And there is crossover with other people's work as well. So, what have you read? What Bret Easton Ellis novels have you read? I'm curious, because I want to know what you think and feel about his work. Fundamentally tantalizing as a writer and fundamentally tantalizing as a person. And I am a bit of a fanboy. I will say that. I hold my hands up. I had the great pleasure of meeting him many years ago at a book event, and I'm so glad that I did. I kept my cool, I introduced myself, and we had a little conversation, and he even signed the program for me. And It was wonderful. And he was extremely switched on, intelligent, and very giving. And after that meeting, after and during the entire thing, I was jumping up and down inside my head like a Chinese schoolgirl. It, I was so trying not to fan out. I was trying to keep my cool and pretend to be intelligent, I suppose. So that's always a thing. But yes, a writer that has kind of crept his way into my life and created something that I'm blown away by and I adore. I do. I adore his work. And I always will. Fundamentally, Bret Easton Ellis is a writer of vision, of voice, and of many, many more things. So, I'm going to leave this one here. Tell me what you think in the comments below. And like and subscribe as always. Have a wonderful day.